Hi, I'm Robin.
And I'm Chris. Together we're the Gen X couple.
Hey guys.
Take one. Hello, everyone.
I have nothing to say. I have nothing to add to that today. So, you probably saw the title, Disney World's Abandoned and Hidden Spaces. And I think when people hear the phrase abandoned Disney, there's this immediate assumption that something dark or scandalous must be hiding underneath. Like Disney closed a door and hoped no one would notice what was behind it. Let me stop right there and say we love Disney. We love everything about Disney.
Exactly.
You will never, ever hear us say one bad thing about Disney ever because we're obsessed. So this is going to be a good episode, you guys. And honestly, the reality is much quieter. And in a strange way, it's really much more fascinating. Disney World doesn't really abandon things the way that most places do. They just close them softly. They stop advertising them. They redirect foot traffic and then they wait. And sometimes that waiting lasts a few years. Sometimes it lasts decades. And when a place that was once filled with people suddenly goes silent, that silence becomes the story itself. And that's where imagination runs in. So today, we're not talking about rumors or internet creepypasta. We're talking about places that genuinely actually existed and closed, and in many cases are still there, just no longer part of the story that Disney is telling their guests.
And that's possibly because of the sheer scale of the Walt Disney World. Mm-hmm. This isn't just 4 theme parks, it's roads, lakes, utility corridors, backstage buildings, and massive stretches of land purchased with plans that were meant to unfold over generations.
Yeah, it's bigger than a town. They own a ton of land on there.
And I think upwards to 40% haven't even been built yet.
I think it's probably higher, right? Because there's a lot of, when you drive through, you pass the sign that says, welcome to the most magical place on earth. And then there's like a ton of just green space. There's a ton of undeveloped land in there.
Yeah, and some of those plans worked out beautifully. Others became outdated. Some never happened at all. And when something stops serving a purpose, Disney doesn't always rush in with a wrecking ball. Sometimes it's easier and cheaper to lock the door and let time take over. That's how these places ended up in this strange limbo. They're not part of the guest experience anymore, but they haven't been erased either. And that in-between state is what makes them so fascinating.
Yes. So the first one we're going to talk about is Discovery Island. Discovery Island is probably the most misunderstood place on this entire list. It opened in 1974 as a small zoological park located in Bay Lake over near the Contemporary Resort. For those of you who have been there, that's the resort that has Chef Mickey's in it. Chef Mickey's is a great buffet, by the way. Character breakfast. But anyway, so the guests had to reach it by boat, and once you arrived, it was intentionally calm. There were no rides, there were no characters, and there was no loud narration. You walked along shaded paths, and you could observe exotic birds, small mammals, and reptiles in naturalistic habitats. For the early years of Walt Disney World, this attraction made perfect sense. Animal Kingdom didn't even exist yet, and Discovery Island filled that conservation-focused niche. But by the late 1990s, everything had changed. Animal Kingdom opened in 1998, and by then Discovery Island wasn't just outdated, it was redundant.
Yes, Discovery Island closed in 1999, and this is where the mythology took over. Disney relocated the animals and shut the gates, but they didn't demolish the island. The docks still stay, the pathways still stay there, some structures stayed, and because the island is visible from Bay Lake, people notice it. Over time, vegetation grew in buildings, weathered, and then the quiet became noticeable. Internet rumors rushed in to fill that silence, stories of deaths, human remains, and secret tragedies. None of these claims are supported by evidence, and Disney has never confirmed anything remotely like that. What makes Discovery Island unsettling is that something that happened there is what stopped happening there. A place designed for calm and observation became completely empty, and our brains don't like that. Do you know if we take the ferry, if we go by it or see it?
I think we do, but I don't know. I look for it every time. When we took one from the Magic Kingdom to the Polynesian last time, I looked, and I don't know exactly where it is. It's in there somewhere, but there's a video of a guy who broke
Snuck in, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, don't do this, don't do that. It's illegal. Don't do it. But a guy did it, and I'm not sure if he ended up getting caught. Probably because he filmed the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I think he caught at least a Disney ban, which is my worst nightmare. But there is a video of it on YouTube if you want to see, and I'm pretty sure I might be thinking of something else, but I think there's still music playing. I think the music is still on a loop. I don't know if it was that
mythology.
No, because I saw a video and I think it was this one, but I'm not sure. But like the music was still playing in the background. I swear, no. But it might not have been this. It could have been a different abandoned thing, because I do watch videos about abandoned things, and I might be getting them mixed up. But it is still there, and there was, like I said, there's a video if you want to see what it looks like now. But don't break in. Don't try to get to the island. Plus, there's crocodiles in that lake. Don't do it, but watch the video. Anyway, so now we're going to start talking about River Country. And this is another one you guys may have heard about, because this was one of their bigger attractions back in the day. And River Country is different because guests didn't just hear that it closed, they watched it decay. It opened in 1976 as Disney World's first water park, and it was themed like an old-fashioned swimming hole. And at the time, this wasn't anything unusual. There were rock formations, rope swings, docks, and water was filtered in from Bay Lake, which is that big lake right in front of the Magic Kingdom, if you didn't catch on to that when I mentioned it in the last little section. But so yeah, they filtered in the water from Bay Lake, and guests could swim in what felt like a rustic, natural environment. But standards changed. By the 1990s, Disney had opened Typhoon Lagoon and Blizzard Beach, which were much larger, flashier, and built with modern water systems. So River Country began to feel small, and it was increasingly expensive for them to maintain.
Now, there's a myth out there that River Country closed because of a drowning in 1980. That incident was tragic, but it was not the reason for closure. And Disney has been very clear about that. The real issue was infrastructure. Retrofitting River Country to meet modern health and safety standards would have required rebuilding it almost entirely from scratch. From a business perspective, that made no sense. And what cemented River Country's reputation is that it wasn't immediately demolished. Guests walked past the site and saw the slides rusting, vegetation creeping in, and structures slowly decaying. For years, it sat in plain view, aging in real time. And that visibility made it really feel truly abandoned.
And here's where I'm a terrible, quote unquote, I'm making air quotes, researcher, because I don't even know where on the property this was located. Do you?
It's probably by the water parks now, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder if it's even still there. I'm going to take to YouTube when we're done, and I will update you guys when I find an answer. Anyway, we're going to move on to the Wonders of Life Pavilion. And the Wonders of Life Pavilion is one of those closures that almost feels polite. It opened in 1989 as part of EPCOT's original mission to educate through entertainment, focusing on health, medicine, and the human body. And at the time, it felt ambitious. Attractions like Body Wars use motion simulation technology that was impressive for that time. And Cranium Command blended humor with education in a way EPCOT was really good at back then, although EPCOT's amazing anyway. The problem with the Wonders of Life Pavilion and with science-based attractions is that science changes fast, we know that, and what felt cutting edge in the late 1980s started to feel dated by the early 2000s. Sponsorship played a huge role here as well, because EPCOT was built around the idea that corporations would fund and refresh attractions, and when those sponsors pulled out, Disney was left with expensive spaces that required constant updates to stay relevant. I feel like there's a ride there that needs an update, but they shouldn't because it's so awesome. I don't know what I'm thinking of. No, not Soarin'. Soarin' never gets old. What am I thinking of? You know what I'm thinking of? Never mind. I'm thinking of the Carousel of Progress, and I do think they're updating it, but I also hope they don't change anything because it's amazing. It is outdated.
It needs an update. Maybe like an ad.
In addition, I don't know how they would fit that in there. I hope they don't get rid of the guy from right around the turn of the century. because
Yes,
I love that.
it's a
I
brand new
love
day.
I love the Carousel of Progress so much. It's so nostalgic. I love it so much.
So by 2007, Wonders of Life quietly closed, and unlike places like River Country, there was no visible decay for guests to latch onto. Disney removed the ride systems, dismantled the sets, and left the building intact. That's why so many people assume it's abandoned because it's closed, but still standing. In reality, the pavilion has been used repeatedly for festivals, special exhibits, and temporary events, especially during the EPCOT festivals. The building still has power, climate control, and staffing when it's in use. What disappeared wasn't the structure, but the purpose. And that's how important distinction, because this is how Disney handles many closures. They erase the experiences long before they erase the building. And guests walk past these spaces every day without realizing that entire attractions once lived inside them.
Yeah, and actually, Epcot has been updated a lot in the last 10 or 15 years, really, because remember when we first started going with the kids, there were Interventions had two buildings. Remember the sidewalk
Yes.
that used to light up when you walked on it? That was
Yes.
so cool. But they've got even cooler updates now. But they change it. They change things. The times change. New movies come out. You know, they built that whole Moana area, water area at Epcot, which is awesome. But, you know, they have to keep up with the movies, and it just makes sense that things change. But anyway, let's talk about the Skyway. And the Skyway is one of those attractions that people remember emotionally rather than practically. It opened in 1971 and it connected Fantasyland and Tomorrowland via gondolas that floated over the park. You know what like a ski lift sort of a ride. You guys know what I'm talking about. So, from a guest perspective, it was magical. Of course, it was. You got an aerial view of the castle, Tomorrowland, and the Fantasyland rooftops. But from an operational perspective, it was pretty complicated. Accessibility was a major issue. Loading and unloading the gondolas wasn't as friendly to guests with mobility challenges, and retrofitting the system would have been extremely difficult. Capacity was another problem. The Skyway couldn't move enough people efficiently during peak times, which made it less useful as the park grew busier. And then there was maintenance. Aerial cable systems require constant inspection and upkeep, and especially in the Florida weather.
Yeah, so by the late 1990s, the Skyway simply didn't fit Disney's priorities anymore. It closed in 1999, and unlike some attractions, it was fully removed from guest view. But removed doesn't mean vanished. The former station buildings were absorbed into surrounding structures, and if you know where to look, you can still spot architectural clues that
Architectural?
yep, clues that hint at where the Skyway once operated. Backstage, some concrete footers are in support
Remnants remained.
remnants remained for years. What's interesting is that Disney never abandoned the idea of aerial transportation. The Skyliner system is proof of that. The Skyway wasn't a failure so much as a prototype that outlived its practicality.
Yes, and before we hop on to the next one, I feel like for people that aren't familiar, backstage is means the areas that the cast members or employees go in. So as regular civilians, we wouldn't see it, but that's, the what's in the back behind all the rides. And the utilidor that we've talked about, which is what's underground at the Magic Kingdom, that's backstage, is considered backstage. And then we had done a tour and we saw a lot of the backstage areas where they keep the parade floats and whatnot. And the other thing I want to mention, the Skyliner system, in case people don't know, it's a Disney transportation model that takes you between Hollywood Studios, Epcot, and then a few of the resorts.
Yeah.
What resorts?
Caribbean Beach.
Caribbean Beach, I think the Riviera,
Pop
Pop
Century.
Century. And then, like, you could get off at the back of the International
Epcot.
Gateway of Epcot, which is behind France, and all those resorts are right there, too, like the Beach and Yacht Club, Boardwalk, Swan and Dolphin, all that stuff. In case you didn't know, now you know. And knowing's half the battle. But let's talk about Epcot's unfinished future world. Epcot feels complete when you walk through it, right?
It does.
It does. But it was never finished the way its designers originally imagined. Future World was supposed to be much larger, filled with additional pavilions sponsored by corporations and countries focused on technology, innovation, and global problem solving. In the early years, sponsorship was the backbone of Epcot. Companies funded attractions, updated exhibits, and aligned their brand with progress and optimism. I guess probably similar to the GM test track, right?
Yeah.
Right? That's the first one that popped into my mind. But anyway, but as economic conditions changed and sponsorships became less appealing, many planned pavilions never actually moved forward.
And the physical evidence of those unrealized plans is still there. Oversized walkways that seem strangely wide, empty pads hidden behind landscaping, infrastructure built to support buildings that were never constructed. These aren't accidents, they're placeholders. Epcot wasn't designed to grow, and that growth is stalled.
Well, Epcot wasn't designed to feel unfinished,
Right.
but it was designed to grow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And over time, Disney adapted by reimagining the park rather than completing the original blueprint. That's why Epcot feels layered rather than incomplete. Each redesign builds on top of ambitions that were partially realized and they quietly set aside. They're due for a new country, though.
They are. They are. I can't picture in my mind where they would put it, but there's all that space. You know, like that corner where
Yeah.
there's like the bongos, and what is that? It's between Germany and what is it? China?
Mexico?
No. It goes Mexico,
Oh,
Norway, China, right? And it ends
Yeah.
at China, and then there's that empty space. There's
Yeah.
like a little refreshment outpost, and there's the bongo drums, and then it goes into Germany. But there's that whole corner,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's probably land back there, and I bet they could probably expand back that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're just guessing, but they could use a few new countries
They're due.
represented there.
They're
They are
due.
due because they haven't added a new one in years. Although the ones that are there are awesome, but yeah, a new one would be fun. But anyway, let's talk about hotels that never were. And so, one of the lesser known aspects of Disney World's hidden history is how many resort concepts never made it past the planning phase. Early plans included multiple international themed hotels positioned around the World Showcase, creating a resort loop that mirrored the country's that guests visited inside the park. There were Venetian inspired resorts, Parisian themed concepts, and other elaborate ideas that were seriously considered. These weren't just sketches on napkins either. They influenced land acquisition. So, see, there is land back there. And apparently, it influenced road placement and sightline planned across this property, too. So,
And you can still see evidence of these plans today if you know where to look. Roads that seem to lead to nowhere, large undeveloped buffers of land positioning exactly where a resort would make sense. Disney often plans decades ahead, even when execution never happens. And rather than repurposing that land immediately, they leave it untouched, waiting for a future that may or may not arrive. That patience is part of Disney's long-term strategy, and it's why so much of the property feels like it's holding its breath.
yeah, I feel like that makes sense. Like I said, I feel like we nailed it where that extra land was going to be. That'd be cool to have some new hotels to choose from. Eventually, we're going to stay at all the hotels. We haven't made it there yet, but that's, I think, one of our goals is to stay at each and every hotel there. But anyway, we mentioned it before, so I wanted to circle back and talk a little bit about the utilidors. So the utilidor system, it's beneath the Magic Kingdom, and it's often lumped into conversation about abandoned or hidden Disney spaces, but really it's neither one. It's one of the most active parts of the park. And what confuses people is the idea that it's underground. So, and we learned this on the Keys to the Kingdom tour that we took twice. We've taken twice. The Magic Kingdom is actually built on the second floor, and the utilidors are actually on the ground level. And Disney did this deliberately after learning from Disneyland, where backstage operations often bled into the guest areas. The utilidors allow the cast members to move between lands without breaking the illusion above ground. Because think about it, you don't want to see somebody in Tomorrowland walking through in a Small World uniform, right? It wouldn't go, so they would go underground or on the ground level.
Yes. And inside the utilidors, everything that keeps the park running happens out of sight. Costume departments, trash removal, food transportation, security, cast member break areas all exist below the park. This system allows parades to appear seamlessly, trash to vanish without guests noticing, and characters to stay exactly where they belong thematically. Guests almost never see this space unless they're on a very specific
Which
tour,
we've taken twice.
and it's not abandoned, it's invisible by design. And that invisibility is one of the reasons Magic Kingdoms feel so special.
Yeah. It's called the Keys to the Kingdom tour. So Chris and I have taken it twice, and it's incredible. It's a 5 hour tour, and you do get to go into the utilidor. We saw the costume department. You walk through, like, not a lot of it, but we got to see it. And we did go backstage, and we got to see a lot of parade floats, and we got to
Yes.
do some behind the scenes on a couple of the rides, which was really cool. So that's highly recommended from us. Actually, we should do that again. We should book it again for maybe like later this year.
Yeah.
Just saying. But anyway, this is one of my favorite things about Disney, and I know I'll never get to see it because I'm not special enough.
You're a princess.
But it's a dream. If anybody from Disney ever hears this, I really want an invite. It's the Cinderella Castle Suite. Did you guys know that there was a suite inside the castle at the Magic Kingdom? So the Cinderella Castle Suite is one of the most exclusive spaces on the Disney property. It was originally intended to be an apartment for the man himself, Walt, and his family, and it's a private space inside the park. Walt passed away before the suite was ever completed, and for decades the space just sat unfinished, and it was primarily used for storage and for technical purposes.
And years later, Disney completed the suite and transformed it into what is today, a luxurious space reserved for contest winners and special guests. It's not available for booking, and most guests will never see it. The intentional scarcity is what keeps the suite mythical. It's not abandoned, it's not withheld, and that distinction matters because Disney understands that some spaces gain power not by accessibility, by being just out of reach.
Yeah, it's invite only, and I could die happy if I ever got invited to stay there. Actually, I feel like, are you not allowed to take pictures in there or
No,
something?
I've seen pictures,
Oh,
but
have
not
you?
all of them. It's like all in a mural. It has like a big mural.
Oh. Okay.
If you Google it or somewhere on the interweb.
Al Gore's interwebs?
Yes.
He invented them, Just kidding. He thinks he did. But anyway, that's my dream, to get invited to the Cinderella Castle Suite. But anyway, so what ties all these places together isn't mystery or scandal. It's actually restraint, you guys. Disney World doesn't rush endings. When something stops working, it steps out of the spotlight, but it doesn't vanish. It just waits. And sometimes it waits for a new purpose. Sometimes it waits forever. And sometimes it simply becomes part of the landscape, slowly blending into the background.
And some places become forest, some become festivals, some exist only as concrete beneath landscaping or infrastructure hidden behind walls, but none of them truly disappear. They're reminders that Disney World isn't just a place that you visit, it's a place labored with time, decisions, and forgotten intentions. You know what also is going to be a new one? Is the Tom Sawyer Land. They've been taking that apart, drained the river.
Yeah, Tom Sawyer's Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, is that villains or is that cars? I forget.
I don't know
which
yet.
is which.
I don't know what they're going to do.
No,
with it.
the planes are there. I just forget which is which. That one might be the new Cars Land. I actually think, which
that's a
will
big
be
area
cute.
too.
It is a big area because they took out the
island, the river,
the river boat.
Yeah.
I know I'm excited to see it. I'm excited. There's a Villains Land, but where's that coming? I don't even remember.
I don't know.
I should know all this stuff because I love Disney so much, but until it actually exists, I'm not as focused on it. But anyway, next time you're walking through Disney World and something feels oddly quiet or is strangely oversized or just a little out of place, there's probably a story there. You're just not meant to see it anymore.
And that ends it for us.
Guys, we hope you liked it. We're obsessed with Disney World. We'll be back there in May. And we should make a list of some of these places. Not ones, obviously, that are off limits, because we would never want to catch a Disney band, but we should try to take some pictures.
All right. See you guys later. See you later, alligator.
Well, I feel like that was like a double. You should have just left it at see you later, alligator. Whatever. In a wild crocodile.